This is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Alita.
And I'm Faithless Forrest, and we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and free of supernatural belief.
On today's show, we will investigate the close tie of free thought with civil rights and the women's movement.
But first, we want to tell you about the show's sponsors.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's in the Old City, starting at about 5:30. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table. And, as Matt Dillahunty at the Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday, we hold the Skeptics Book Club. On the fourth Sunday, we're mixing it up, sometimes with a get-together we call a reflections meeting. It features a potluck lunch at someone's home, and sometimes we get together to play board games or similar activities, and now and then we have a blood drive too.
Later in the show, we'll give you our websites to visit for additional details, including times and locations.
All right. Well, we got anything for in the news?
We have some items in the news on which to comment. In a November 3rd Pew Research article entitled U.S. Public Becoming Less Religious, an interesting detail emerges.
The Pew Center for Research reports that among religiously unaffiliated persons, the belief in God has dropped. The study compares results of a survey from 2007 to 2014. The change is from 70% to 61%.
Oh. In the non-belief community, we are sometimes uncertain of these measurements because of the vague definition around words like spirituality and the ever logically flawed claim that to be atheists you have to prove that every God does not exist.
For new viewers, let's go over the meaning of some of these words. Let's start with atheist. It is a disbelief or lack of belief in the existence of God or gods. It is like an empty glass. You cannot say that it is always an empty glass of, say, milk. It is more proper to say just that it is empty.
Next we have theist. This is a belief in a god or gods. So Christians are theists, as are Hindus. Many Buddhists are not theists since they do not believe Buddha was a god or supernatural.
And next we have agnostic, a person who says we do not know or even cannot know about gods or gods. Some people use the word to mean something halfway between theist and atheist, but that is poor usage leading to confused thinking.
Yeah.
Gnosticism is a statement about what we think we can know. Agnostics say we are without knowledge, and a Gnostic says we have knowledge.
We can have 4 combinations: agnostic atheist, Gnostic atheist, agnostic theists, and Gnostic theists.
All right, that's pretty complicated. I'll admit I get dizzy even reading this. So an agnostic atheist doubts that we can know about evidence of gods and believes there is no God. And a Gnostic atheist thinks we can know about evidence of gods and believes there is no gods.
Okay.
And an agnostic theist doubts we can know about the existence of God or gods and believes in a god or gods. And finally, a Gnostic theist thinks we can know about the evidence of gods and believes in a god or gods.
There is one more term, humanism. The definition is more complex and not as universally agreed upon. From Wikipedia, humanism is a philosophical and ethical stance that emphasizes the value and agency of human beings, individually and collectively, and generally prefers critical thinking and evidence, rationalism, empiricism, over unthinking acceptance of a dogma or superstition. And there are theistic and atheistic humanists to throw into the mix of how people identify.
So we see that there could be a lot more question in future Pew Research surveys. All right, well, it's
Yeah.
time to talk about our main subject today.
It certainly is. November 12th, coming up in just a few days, 2015, is the bicentennial of the birth of Elizabeth Cady Stanton. So we thought we would speak to viewers about her important contributions to free thought, the 19th century abolitionist movement, and suffrage movement, and women's legal rights.
Well, you know, Alita, we don't have to just talk about this. I have another idea.
You do?
Yes, so let me get on this side of the studio and pull out my remote control.
And
And
then what?
And now, what have you got here? I had a revelation while writing up this script. I call it the phase-layered, overside twister device.
You mean a plot device?
You could say that. It would roll off the tongue easier. And, of course, we could just call it a time machine.
Are you telling me you built a time machine out of a giant gold Rolex?
Well, the way I see it, if you're going to build a time machine out of a watch, why not do it with some style? Besides, the solid gold construction was perfect for the phase-layered, overside twister device.
You mean plot device?
Well, yeah.
Okay, so how does it work?
Well, you see, I have it set for November 12th, and the location is set for Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
No, wait. We can't interview a newborn.
Well, I have it set for the year 1900, so she will not be a newborn.
Okay, but now what?
Well, I will press the seek button, and
But I don't hear anything, even with my good ear.
well,
so.
it's silent. It's not like it's a DeLorean or something. It works quietly, but I think it's worked. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Mrs. Stanton, are you there?
Hello? I'm Elizabeth Stanton. What's going on?
Well, just a moment and you will see.
Oh my Zeus! Can this really be Elizabeth Cady Stanton?
What am I doing here?
It looks like the plot device, time machine, actually worked.
All right, well, I'm going to leave you guys in the studio now. And if you need anything, just give me a call. And I hope you guys have a good time together.
Well, thank you, Forrest. Mrs. Stanton, may I call you Elizabeth?
Well, my dear, of course you may.
Well, Elizabeth, I'm Alita. Oops, I think I missed something. No, I didn't. I'm Alita, and you've been brought to the future by our time machine. We're thrilled to have you here today. We were just talking about how it's been 200 years since your birth.
Really?
It's such an honor. I hope you don't mind answering some questions about yourself. This is such an incredible opportunity for us in 2015.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. It's hard to believe it's been so long. I'm sure things have changed quite a bit since I was alive. Perhaps I should be asking you the questions.
Well, yes, things have changed, Elizabeth. One thing that will surprise you is that many, many people can see us as we sit here chatting, and they will want to learn more about you and your work. So maybe we should get started. But before that, let's just get comfortable.
Okay.
So, how did you become interested in women's suffrage?
I really have to give credit to my cousin Gertie Smith. He was very much in favor of abolition of slavery. Did you know Garrett actually ran for president of the United States?
Really?
Yes, 1848, 1856, and 1860.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, he tried to give freed slaves land in New York, but bigotry against them didn't help the cause. At any rate, I admired his work and found it inspiring. I even named one of my children after him.
Oh, yes, your children. I read that you married when you were 25.
Oh, yes, I was an old maid by then. I married Henry Stanton. He was quite a man, but let me tell you, I did not say I would obey him in my vows. Oh, no, I was my own woman. Right after we married, we set off for London to attend the anti-slavery convention being held there.
Ooh, my goodness. Did anything important happen at that convention?
Yes, my dear friend Lucetta Mott. While in London...
Lucretia.
Yes, Lucretia Mott. Well, I'm old late, ma'am. Very, very old. My mind is not what it used to be.
I do understand.
But she was a delegate to the convention. Can you believe it? The men voted to deny a woman participation in the proceedings.
Oh, my goodness.
People had said she should go and be there and represent them, and they said no. Anyhow, they required that her and other women delegates have to sit in a roped-off section out of the view of the men. Well, that just wasn't right. And William Lloyd Garrison didn't think so either. He refused his own seat with the men and sat with the women.
Oh, good for him.
Yes, he liked the women. This helped me realize that that more work needed to be done for women's rights, as well as the rights of those held in slavery.
Well, what about your marriage to Mr. Stanton? How did that go?
Henry, Mr. Stanton, and I loved each other very much. We did not always see eye to eye. No, he did not appreciate my position on women's suffrage, for one thing. Over the years, we spent much time apart. Here is something I once wrote about how I felt about marriage. In general, discontent I felt with women's portion as a wife, housekeeper, physician, spiritual guide, and chaotic conditions into which everything fell without her consent, supervision, and Weir's anxious look of the majority of women inspired me with a strong feeling that some active measure should be taken to remedy the wrongs of society in general and the women in particular. My experience at the World Anti-Slavery Convention, all I had read of the legal status of women and the oppression I saw everywhere together swept across my soul. Yes, intensified now by many personal experiences, it seemed as if all the elements had conspired to impel me to some onward steps. I could not see what to do, where to begin. My only thought was a public meeting for the protest and discussion.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. You sound like you were quite inspired, really quite inspired. So, what did you do?
Well, with some other ladies who held the same sentiments, we organized the Seneca Falls Convention.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yes. That was in 1848. I remember it well. Lucretia and her sister Martha Goffin Wright helped me with that. Goodness, it was quite an event with over 300 attending.
That's quite a lot.
We made several proclamations at the convention, including that men and women were created equal.
Oh, good for you. But I'm sure that was quite revolutionary for the time, I imagine.
Indeed it was. It did not sit well with most men.
I can imagine. Now, Elizabeth, I've read your Declaration of Sentiments, which you presented at that convention, and I like the way you opened it by harking back to the Declaration of Independence. Would you mind sharing some of that with us?
Not at all. This is how I opened. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one portion of the family of man to assume among the people of earth a different position from that which they have hereto occupied, but one which the laws of nature and of God entitled them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the cause that impel them to such course. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, and that they are empowered by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among those life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure those rights, governments are instituted, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed.
Exactly.
Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of those rights, it is the right of those who suffer from it to refuse allegiance to it. That's right. And to insist upon the institution of a new government, and laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
I feel like I was almost there. That's really wonderful. But that was really just the introduction. Could you share also with us today your actual sentiments that you included at the convention?
I would love that opportunity.
Good.
This is the list of sentiments I gave in 1884. It is long, so be patient.
Okay.
Remember, I am speaking of what men have done to women. He has never permitted her to exercise her intelligible right of elective franchise. You know, we didn't get to vote.
No.
I don't think women are yet. I don't know.
There's a surprise coming.
Oh, did we succeed?
We did.
Oh, yay. He has compelled her to submit to laws in the formation to which she has no voice. I know.
No representation.
No, the same thing that the colonists fought the Brits against. He has withheld her from her rights, which are given to the most ignorant and degraded men, both natives and foreigners. Having deprived her of this first right of citizenship, as a citizen, the elective franchise, thereby leaving her without representation in the halls of legislation, he has oppressed her on all sides.
No.
He has made her, if married, in the eyes of the law, civilly dead. Everything I have is my husband's.
Oh, that's awful.
Yes. He has taken from her all right and property, even to the wages she earns.
That is just not right.
No, it is not. He has made her morally an irresponsible being, and she can commit many crimes of impunity provided they have been done in the presence of her husband. In the covenant of marriage, she is compelled to promise obedience to her husband.
You didn't do that.
No, I didn't. He becoming to all indigents and purposes her master. The law giving him power to deprive her of liberty and to admire chasteness.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes. He has so framed the laws of divorce as to what shall be the proper cause of divorce in case of separation, to whom the guardianship of the children shall be given, as to be wholly regardless of the happiness of the woman, the law, in all cases, going upon a falsely supposition of the supremacy of men and giving all power into his hands.
You know, that has not changed very much. I'm sad to say.
Divorce is a messy business.
It is.
After depriving her of all rights as a married woman, if single and the owner of property, he has taxed her to support a government which recognizes her only when her property can be made profitable too. Excuse me. He has monopolized nearly all profitable employments, and from those she is permitted to follow, she receives a scanty remuneration. We don't get to earn much money.
That's not fair either.
No.
And there's still some of that going on even today.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Just with the few career choices.
Oh, well, we have more career choices, but normally don't earn as much as men.
Oh, no. No, no, no. He closes against her all avenues to wealth and distinction, which he considers most honorable to himself. As a teacher of theology, medicine, or law, she is not known.
Yeah. Well, at least women have made some gains in those areas.
Oh, good. Did you ever get a woman on the Supreme Court?
Oh, we did. We did indeed. More than one at
wow.
a time.
Another woman in the halls of governance?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, wow. He closed her against all the avenues to wealth and distinction.
Oh, we covered that one.
Oh, yes, we did. He has denied her the faculties for obtaining a thorough education, all colleges being closed against her. How did these women get into the Supreme Court and the halls of governance?
Well, actually, women can go to college, and most do these days.
That is good to hear.
Yes, I've been to college myself.
He allows her in church as well as state, but a subordinate position, claiming apostolic authority for her exclusion from the ministry, and with some exemptions from any public participation in the affairs of the church.
That's still true in some churches.
Oh. He has created a false public sentiment by giving the world a different code of morals for men and women, by which moral delinquencies from which exclude women from society are not only tolerated, but deemed of little account in men.
Sad.
He has usurped the prerogative of Jehovah himself, claiming it is at his right to assign for her sphere of action when that belongs to her conscience and her God. And finally, he has endeavored in every way that he could to destroy her confidence in her own power, to lessen her self-respect, and to make her willing to lead a dependent and abject life.
There are still men who do exactly that, even today.
Oh, my.
But this is all quite inspiring and a long list of grievances. So tell me, after going through these, how did the audience react?
Well, as I said, there were over 300 there to hear the sentiments. Frederick Douglass was even among them, and he added his support.
Good for him.
Yes. Of those 300, there were 100 signers of the Declaration of Sentiments, 32 of whom were men.
That's great.
Yes. Of course, it was still quite controversial.
Oh, I'm sure. So, at the convention, there were all those people. Were there any attendees at the convention who disappointed you by not signing the Declaration of Sentiments?
Well, I don't like to criticize, but I do wish that Amelia Bloomer had signed. I realize that she had her reasons, and I respect that.
Well, can you tell us more about that?
I shouldn't speak for Amelia.
Well, maybe you can just surmise her reasons from something she may have shared with you.
Well, you must understand these sentiments were very controversial.
Oh, yes, I know.
Those of us working for women's rights were working on many fronts. At the time when temperance and female property rights were major issues, even many supporters of women's rights believed the Declaration endorsement of women's suffrage would hinder their movement, causing them to lose much-needed public support. I believe Amelia fell into that camp.
Oh, I can see that. So, yeah, it would have been difficult. But Elizabeth, even though you and Mr. Stanton did not agree on all of these issues and spent much of your time apart, you still managed to have 7 children. Did all those pregnancies affect your work in any way?
Now, let me make it clear. I loved Henry and all my children.
I'm sure.
But it was at times difficult to manage a household and carry on with my activities gaining women's rights.
Well, I can well imagine, but can you tell us more about that?
Well, after the Seneca Falls Convention, I was quite popular for giving speeches. This is the first time I've traveled through time.
Well, you're very lucky at that.
Yes, I think it's made me a little queasy, but in 1850, however, I was not able to speak at the first National Women's Rights Convention because of pregnancy. Instead, I lent my support and wrote a speech to be read there.
Oh, that must have been a disappointment. But really, though, you lived through the Civil War. Now, did that affect your thinking in any way?
Indeed, it was a very, very sad time. So much death, so much suffering.
Yes, but after the war, the slaves had been freed. Now, wasn't that a good thing?
Oh, I'm beginning to feel my blood starting to boil just thinking about it.
But tell us what happened. Tell us about it.
It's somewhat complicated.
Yeah, well, isn't everything?
Yes, my dear, you're right. Well,
Okay, well, go on.
having all those freed slaves brought up some new issues and conflicts. You see, most of them were not educated. They had all been slaves, after all, and now they were free.
Well, yes, but so?
Well, there was support among some of our former supporters to give these slaves the right to vote.
But isn't enfranchisement a good thing?
Indeed, but women should have been included. That's the point.
Oh, I see. You were feeling left out.
Left out? All of those years I'd been working on getting vote and equal rights for women, and now there are amendments to the Constitution that give these rights to former slaves and not women? Not educated women, but slaves.
Sorry.
I don't mean any disgrace to these people. They had just not been educated through no fault of their own. I will say we felt left out. Women should have been explicitly included in those amendments.
Well, Elizabeth, I certainly do understand your disappointment, but did your feelings cause any problems?
Sadly, yes. I think I was overwhelmed with disappointment. But finally, I realized that I could only appeal to black women. I could appeal to black women. They had triple bondage that men never knew. That of slavery, that of gender, and that of race. Thaddeus Stevens, a Republican congressman from Pennsylvania and an abolitionist, agreed with me and others that voting rights should be universal. In 1866, Susan B. Anthony and several other suffragists I drafted a universal suffrage petition demanding the right to vote be given without consideration of race or sex. The petition was introduced in the United States Congress by Mr. Stevens.
Good.
Yes, but despite these efforts, in 1868, the 14th Amendment was passed without adjustment. Sad, sad. I did not support the 14th Amendment, nor the 15th either. This made some suffragists angry, but I cannot help my integrity for upholding the rights of women.
So, after that, what did you do?
Well, Susan and I, along with others, really tried to argue that the 14th and 15th Amendments did give women equal rights, and I was busy writing books and speeches too.
Oh, busy writing books and speeches. So, maybe you can tell us some of the things you wrote.
Well, along with Susan and Matilda Jocelyn Gage, I wrote The History of Women's Suffrage.
Ah.
Yes, quite lengthy at 6 volumes.
Oh.
Yes. I also wrote The Women's Bible. I tried to correct some of the sexist teachings of the Bible, but I'm most proud of our weekly periodical, The Revolutionists.
Sounds quite thrilling.
Yes, yes. In that, I was able to write my opinion pieces. I've been told I have an opinion or two.
I think I've gathered that.
I also wrote an autobiography, 80 years or more, a reminiscence from 1815 to 1897, just recently come out. Oh,
Wow.
wait, no. I imagine it's been around for a while now.
Well, yes, it just came out from what you remember, but, you know, this is now 2015, so it's been out in the public for quite some time.
Do people like it?
Well, we can talk about that during the break, because now I think it's time for us to take a break.
Okay.
Okay.
Around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else? Well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun. Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
Well, Elizabeth, here we are back again with all these people out there in TV land watching us. I'm sure that must be really quite incredible for you to grasp. But
Tell me, my dear, TV, these people that you keep talking about?
I know you can't see them, but by the wonders of modern technology, there are people sitting in their homes far, far away from where we are right now, watching what we're doing, watching us talking here together.
Well, my.
It's really quite remarkable, even for us in the modern age when we stop and think about it. But when we left off, we were talking about what you had written in your speeches. So I'd like to know more about some of the speeches you gave.
Oh, my dear, there's so many of them. Where would you like me to start?
Well, one that I've heard about and one that you're quite famous for is the solitude of self. Could you share some of that with us?
Well, here's a part of that speech. The isolation of every human soul and the necessity of self-dependence must give each individual the right to choose his own surroundings. The strongest reason for giving women all the opportunities for higher education, for the full development of her faculties, her force of mind and body, for giving her the most enlarged freedom and thought and action, a complete emancipation from all forms of bondage, of custom, dependence, superstition, from all the crippling influences of fear, is the solitude and personal responsibility of her own individual life. The strongest reason why we ask for women to have a voice in government under which she lives, in the religion she is asked to believe, equality in social life, where she is the chief factor, and places in the trades and professions where she may earn her bread. It is because of her birthright to self-sovereignty, because as an individual, she must rely on herself.
Oh, Elizabeth, those words hold true even today, as they did more than a century ago.
Yes, it was a moving speech, if I do say so myself. Lucy Stone was so impressed with it that she published The Solitude of Self in its entirety in Women's Journal.
Oh, that must have been quite an honor. Now, Elizabeth, over the years, you also belonged to several organizations that fought for women's rights. What can you tell us about those organizations?
Well, in 1852, Susan and I were instrumental in founding a short-lived Women's State Temperance Society. I was the president of the organization and scandalized many supporters by suggesting that drunkenness be made a sufficient case for divorce. It didn't last much more than a year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Less than a year.
Sounds quite rousing. But other organizations?
When they were working against the passage of the 15th Amendment in 1869, Susan and I founded the National Women's Suffrage Association. I was its president for 21 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes. In the meantime, Lucy Stone, Elizabeth Blackwell, and Julia Ward Stone started and led another organization, the American Women's Suffrage Association. They had more backers and money than we did, and they supported the 15th Amendment.
Ah, well, what became of those two organizations?
Well, just recently, in 1890, the two organizations merged to become the National Women's Suffrage Association. I was not in favor of it.
But,
I am its first president, or I became its first president.
oh my goodness, Elizabeth, you've led such an accomplished life and done so many amazing things. Women today owe you a great debt. I certainly wish you had lived long enough to see your dream of women's suffrage come true. I told you, we do have the vote now.
Well, thank you, Alita. I'm just so glad that my work was not in vain.
No, but the fight has to continue, or the rights of women will be eaten away. Even today, there are those in society who want to turn that clock back and take control of women's reproductive rights.
Well, Alita, women of today need to speak up and fight. For instance, now that women have the vote, have you voted?
I have. I vote in every election.
Oh, most recently.
Yes, in the most recent election. Some states had elections just last week.
Wow.
The state where we are right now did not have an election, but there were some, and had there been an election here in Tennessee, I would have voted.
And did your mother vote?
My mother did vote. I remember when I was just a little girl, and I realized what voting was. I asked her who she voted for in the presidential election.
And who did she vote for?
Well, she voted for Eisenhower. He was called Ike.
Ike. An interesting name for a president.
I just remember that as a little girl. Yes. I don't know, though, whether my grandmother voted. I wish I had asked her, because she would have been at the forefront of women when she was a young woman. So,
okay.
I just have to wonder about that.
And you speak of people trying to turn back time on women's rights.
Oh, Elizabeth, let me tell you. Now, I know from reading about your thoughts that you were not in favor of abortion.
No. Infanticide is not okay.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you over whether it's the right thing, but the Supreme Court, following on the footsteps of the 14th Amendment, it was actually the 14th Amendment that laid the foundation for this ruling, but the Supreme Court found that abortion was legal in a case called Roe versus Wade. So women who are in the unfortunate position of needing one have not had to go about an illegal abortion to end a pregnancy. And I know you had 7 children.
Yes, I did.
So you went through lots of pregnancies.
It's not easy.
But even today, there are those who are trying to chip away at women's right to abortions, making it more difficult and more difficult with each passing year. And if we don't fight, if we don't keep pushing for those rights, they can be lost, even after all this time.
Well, I don't think abortion is okay. I do think that women should have their own self-governance and self-determination.
Well, and that is something that, all of those sentiments that we talked about, in fact, shall we go back to those?
Sure enough.
I think I have a page here where I've written those down. Here we go. Maybe we could kind of review some of the gains that we've made and some of the territory that we might have even lost.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, as I said earlier, women are allowed to vote.
I am very, very pleased to hear that.
It wasn't too many years after you died before women were able to achieve that, the right to vote. So it was.
Don't tell me when. I know that I am old. I don't want to know how much longer I have if I have to go back.
Okay. But and women now do have a voice in government because once they had the right to vote, of course, they started having voice in governance. We have not had a woman president yet.
Oh, no.
It's all been men. But one thing, and this might interest you, we now have our very first African American or black president.
Well, does he have an education?
He does have an education. He's got quite a compelling education. Yes, so, and blacks have equal rights with whites. Although there's still, remember you mentioned that bigotry, there is still a lot of bigotry against blacks. I'm so sorry to say that, but it's still there.
Oh, no.
Let's see. So, as I was saying, and we have women as senators, we have women as congressmen, governors.
Oh,
So
wow.
women are taking, a much more active role in government.
You know, women make up half of society.
Exactly. And we are equally smart as men. And it was just a matter of not having the opportunity for education. Like in your case, you didn't have a chance to go to a university and get a college education, although unlike many young women, when you were a young woman, I'm so glad to see that you got some education and your family supported that.
I had to learn on my own.
Yes, you did. But
they have women's colleges now.
yes, well, women can go to college with men.
Well, fancy that.
Yes, things have come a long way. They certainly have.
Is it more popular?
But to get a college education, yes. In fact, all young people are really encouraged to further their education all the way into college and beyond. For instance, I, as a woman, have not only what's called an undergraduate degree, but I went on and had more college education after getting my degree. So I have what's called a graduate degree.
Well, good for you, dear.
I'm very proud of it. I'm sure you would have done that.
As you should be.
You would have done that yourself had you had the opportunity.
I'm sure I would have.
And let's see. So, yes, something else. Women can own property.
My, my, my.
So when a woman gets married, her property does not automatically go into the hands of her husband.
Well, that is reassuring to hear.
It is reassuring. And I like to think, oh, in fact, this may surprise you. Women can even run businesses.
Well, what a wonderful, wonderful step.
It is. There are women who not only run their own businesses that are small, but very large corporations. There are women that head up very large corporations. So they have equal rights to property, and they have more or less equal rights to opportunity. However, I mentioned earlier, women generally do not make as much as men do, and they do the same job. So that's one of the places where we're fighting for those equal rights.
Keep the fight steady.
We will.
Hopefully you can realize it before you're an old lady like me.
I'm getting there. But and we talked in one of your sentiments about divorce, about the children, divorce tends still to favor men. Women have to fight harder in the case of divorce, and it hurts them more, especially economically. So that's an area that we still need more work.
Those men.
But we'd still love our men, right?
I love my man.
Yes. And
We didn't always see eye to eye.
Well,
We loved each other.
I don't think any two
Second
individuals.
children to prove it.
That's right. But I don't think any two individuals will ever see eye to eye on everything. That doesn't mean we can't love them.
No.
So, all right. Most of these we've really made tremendous progress on, but I love this last one. He has endeavored in every way that he could to destroy her confidence in her own powers, to lessen her self-respect, and to make her willing to lead a dependent and abject life. There really are many men, not all, many men who want to subjugate women and make sure that they obey them and see them as superior.
We must join with our sisters, and we must make sure that we all realize that we are wonderful, self-determined human beings, and that no man ever has the right to make us feel less than him.
I am so with you on that. It's just sad to say that there are some women who allow themselves to be subjugated too.
Those are the sisters we really need to reach.
We do need to fight for them. We do. So Elizabeth, I'm wondering if there are any other things that you would like to share with us about your life.
Just that it's been a wonderful, good life. I have made many, many friends.
Are there other things you'd like to ask me about what things are like now?
You've mentioned that there are men who can see us and hear us.
Mm-hmm.
What other wonderful things and wondrous things are there here in 2015? I'm in 2015, right?
2015, yes.
Oh, my, 200 years after my birth.
But this is something that I think you will find rather thrilling. In fact, I still find this rather thrilling. There is this wondrous, almost magical, I'm sure it would seem magical to you, process called being on the internet. And I know that does not mean anything to you, but people in the world can communicate with other people anywhere, across the whole world.
My dear, we do that. We write letters.
No, this is instantaneous. I could be talking with someone, even looking at what they're doing, like the people watching us now, even if they are across the world in China.
Wow.
We could instantaneously.
Why would you want to know someone in China?
It's because knowledge is power, just like getting an education. The more we know, the more powerful we can be. And
I agree with that.
And by communicating with people all over the world, we can learn more about their customs, be more tolerant with them. It's really a wondrous thing to be able to communicate throughout the whole world about different things. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Hi.
Or other questions you might have? There is something I'd like to share with you.
Okay.
Not only can we communicate with people all over the world, but in 1969, and I remember 1969, I know you never lived to see it, but in 1969, there was a spacecraft that left the Earth. It traveled all the way to the moon.
Like a bird. But birds don't go to the moon.
No, this was like a ship that could travel up into the air, into space, and it went all the way to the moon, Elizabeth, and it took people to the moon. And they walked on the moon, and they even took pictures of the Earth. So
that is inconceivable.
I'm sure it must be. But even today, not only going to the moon, but even today, people get into things called airplanes that do fly like birds. They fly through the air and take people from one place to another.
Like a balloon.
Much faster. In fact, can you imagine getting on a train in New York, in Seneca Falls, and traveling all the way to San Francisco?
Oh, my dear. That would take at least a week on the fastest train, and more often more than that.
Well, we could get on a plane in New York in the morning and be in San Francisco that afternoon.
I love your imagination.
It's not imagination. It's absolutely true. We can do those things. Let's see.
Any other fantastic stories you have to regale me with?
Well, I wish I could regale you with how much more women can do than what we've already talked about. But one thing I do want to say is that you led the way. You, Elizabeth, you were the one who got out there and made your voice heard. And even though you had all those children and you had a household to take care of, you had those ideas that other women were able to take up and work for and make those ideas become a reality. And for that, women of today all over the world have you to thank. I have you to thank.
Well, my dear, you're very welcome. As I said before, it is nice to know that my life was not in vain.
Oh, it certainly wasn't.
All of those years serving as president.
Well, I know your friend Susan B. Anthony, and you all did not always see eye to eye either, from what I've read, but Susan B. Anthony and you and all the other wonderful women who marched forward with these ideas have done a service to not only women, but men, because I think by making women more equal, it has helped the men in the world as well.
It's good to know.
There is one thing, we talked about the Civil War.
Yes, wars. Terrible. Terrible.
Well,
On the planet.
Elizabeth, not long after you died, there was something called a world war. It was so huge and massive that it involved countries throughout Europe, the United States. And I know you were in favor of the Spanish-American War, and we're not. You did not really like that Spain had a foothold in the Western.
Well, no, Spain needs to stay in Spain.
Well,
They can keep their kings and queens over there.
but these wars, we've had wars since your death, 2 world wars, terrible wars. Population now, the world population is 7 billion people. Billion, not million, 7 billion. The Earth is struggling to maintain that many people, so that,
Hi.
yes, that's...
Women have been having children, lots and
Yes.
lots of children.
And that's why,
Even voting
even voting,
and working in government, their men are still forcing them to have all these children.
Well-
and you said they could have abortions. I don't like the idea of abortions.
well, women
7 billion people.
women do have access to birth control now and practice birth control. So families with 7 children are not as common as they were in your days.
It is mighty tough managing 7 children
Yes.
and a household and giving speeches
Yes.
and writing and serving as president of suffragist societies. There's a lot to do.
I still so admire everything you've done, and I know it was hard work.
Yes,
I-
it was.
I know it was really hard work. I'm thinking of some of the other wonderful things that have happened. I talked to the internet.
You told me internets and balloons, very, very fast balloons.
Balloons very fast,
And
but
leaving Earth to go to the moon?
Well-
Is the moon popular these days?
Well-
Maybe I can visit before I have to go back in time.
I'm afraid not. There's no air on the moon, and the people who have visited had to come back to Earth. So, no, we just don't go to the moon on a regular basis. It costs a lot of money, too. But, your trains back in the days during your life, we still use trains. Some of them are much faster than they used to be, but we have another means of transportation on the ground that we use, and those are like carriages that don't have any horses.
Oh, interesting.
No horses at all. And there are roads like you had, but there are so many roads, and these carriages that have no horses go very fast, and that causes a lot of trouble because the carriages that have no horses run into each other sometimes, and people are injured and killed that way.
Even carriages with horses can run into each other sometimes if people aren't paying attention to their horses.
Well, they're much faster these days.
How many horses do they use?
They don't have any horses at all. But the power within these carriages would be as much power as hundreds of horses.
Oh my.
Yes, it's really quite amazing.
Well, if people need to go that fast, perhaps it's better that they don't have to team up hundreds of horses.
That's true. That's true. That'd be...
That's a lot of horse poo.
Well, these horseless carriages make their own kind of poo. It just makes the atmosphere much more smoky. It's called air pollution, and that's not good for the people on the planet either.
I can imagine with 7 billion of you running around.
It is a little hard to imagine, isn't it?
Yes.
It's been such an honor to be here with you, and I'm hoping to think of more interesting things that we can share. While we're doing this, there are people all over the city of Knoxville. There are people having dinner, people, at home taking care of their families. There are people doing all these things, and there are people watching us, what we're doing right here. Maybe you have some words that you would like to say to all those people, any special message for them.
Just remember, your vote is your power.
Yes. We have an election coming up. It's next year will be a presidential election. So,
will the black man be back again?
No, he's already served 2 terms. Since your life, presidents can only serve for 2 terms. It was a tradition in those days that presidents only served 2 terms. We actually had a president who served for 4 terms.
Oh, aye.
But after that, it became the law that only 2 terms for a president. So our president is now serving his 2nd term, so there will be a new president after this.
Well, I think it's best that they serve only 2 terms. Government is not meant to be a permanent thing. Citizens should serve.
You're probably right about that. But on the other hand, it takes a while to get a feel for how to govern. And I'm not proposing that presidents should serve more than 2 terms, but there are many things to think. It's very complicated, I think. One of the things that happens with their government, the way it works now, we talked about the Supreme Court and the women serving on the Supreme Court. But between the legislature, the houses of Congress, there's not always agreement. But something else that I really want to get across is that we have 50 states in the Union now.
Oh, my.
50. It's amazing. But, Elizabeth, now it's time for us to bring our show to a close. And will you help me with that since you're here today?
Of course.
All right.
It is time to start wrapping things up. So get your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, programmed by Atheist Society of Knoxville and Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
And I'm Alita. And please send us feedback. Leave voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
Apparently, you can see this show from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on this station here in Knoxville and at 2100 hour Greenwich Mean Time at ctvknox.org. What does that mean?
That's part of that internet I talked about.
Okay.
The opinions expressed on this show are of the hosts and guests, not any official opinion of Ask or RET. We would like to thank Elizabeth for time traveling to the studio today. Also, thanks to Sam for technical support, and to the staff at CTV Knox, and to all of our viewers. We want everyone to know you are not alone.